right, guys, welcome back. Episode 10 of Voice of the Broken. Let's freaking go. We got there, 10 episodes. I don't know what the disclaimer is going to be for this episode because I don't have notes from the editors, which means this is probably just a good little success story and nothing too graphic. However, I would like to let you guys know that these emails that we read are normally pretty heavy. There's talks of eliminating yourselves and abuse and things of that nature. So if those are something that you struggle to listen to, this is not the podcast for you. I would like to give a special shout out to Zach and Jenny, who are the wizards behind everything that we do in terms of emails. They're the ones who handpick these stories and put them live so that Peaches and I can get them and read them. I would also like to shout out my beautiful wife. Peaches is doing her thing, and she's doing it in a way that makes me very proud of her. And I know that she doesn't watch these episodes because they're very heavy for her, but I just think that she needs a little bit of recognition. She's now moving into doing something similar to what I'm doing right now for her garden episodes, though it will not be the full content and that's all she does. She's going to be implementing these stories from women to highlight women's mental health struggles. And I know that the type of person she is, her taking that on is going to be a lot for her, but I'm very excited to see where that takes her garden episodes. Also, just want to let you guys know, I am still under the weather. The cough is still there. It's not as prevalent, but if you get weird cuts or jumps, it's because I had a coughing fit and I wanted to cut it out. You guys don't need to hear all that. His email is called Success Story for Chris. Hey guys, how's it going? My name is, I'm not saying your name. I'm 29 years old, and this is my success story for Chris on how I went from growing up and being a drug dealer till now. Now, I'm a happily married father of two beautiful little boys. Fuck yeah, you got a family, doing the thing. Love that. Also would like to say that almost everyone that I know that ever thrived in the drug game has now become entrepreneurs and is doing very well for themselves because they took the lessons they learned in the game and applied it to life. There's a hustler's mentality that comes from that. So I'm excited to see your success story and see how you changed and what you're doing with your life. I would like to start as early on with my life as I can remember, and most of my memories begin when I was 12. That's crazy that it's so late. Mine are like 6 and 7. I have earlier memories from like little, but they're foggy and they're very specific, like little blips. Are your memories like that? Is that like for everyone? How back can you guys remember? Leave it in the comments. Back to the email. My father was an alcoholic. Mine too. My stepdad anyways. To most of the memories of him, he was a good father. He never abused me or anything like that, but he was abusive towards my mother. I can remember from around 7, she, on a couple of occasions, would run away from him because he was going to beat her. And she would come into my room to hide. So you're remembering before 12. You're remembering at 7. When I was 11, maybe 12 years old, we had lost the house we were living in and moved in with some family. We were living there in their backyard in tents, and I remember coming home from school one day, and my dad had been arrested and taken to jail for domestic violence. So that sucks. However, that family taking you in and allowing you to live in their backyard in tents is a low of lows. Like, as a young person to be that age and living like that, it's setting you up to know what it is to be at rock bottom. And this is the type of shit that leaves a chip on your shoulder to not want to be that way when you're an adult. This could also break people. So this is one of those catch-22s where this is either going to set you up for success or it's just going to let you know that like living in a tent in a backyard is not that big of a deal. He had choked my mom to the point of her almost passing out when family members came in and stopped it. I'd come home to my mom bruised up with hospital bands and my father gone into jail. Not too long after that, they separated and each found new partners about a year later. I'm curious if your dad is still abusive or if it was just this way to your mother. Not that that's really relevant, but I'm always curious how much of that shit the women instigated. And that doesn't give leeway to put your hands on a woman, but we all know that women have the ability to do shit like that, and we are not supposed to retaliate or defend ourselves. And from lived experience, I watched my mom instigate a lot of her ass beatings. Not saying that it was right. She absolutely should not have had her hands put on her because of the way that she acted. But my mom was kind of a gangster with the way that she portrayed herself. She fucking didn't give a shit, and she would fight. So it was like that in my house. After that, my mother moved into her own apartment with her new boyfriend, and my father stayed with his family where we were living. That's when I started smoking weed and cigarettes with friends in 7th grade. It's pretty common. I remember I used to sell snacks to make money and do stuff to buy weed. Okay, so let's talk about that because you're younger than I am, significantly younger than I am at 29. When I was in school, it was blow pops for a quarter. You'd hit the Publix on the way to school and buy an entire bag of blow pops with your lunch money and hope that you sold enough of those blow pops at 25 cents a pop so that you could buy your lunch that day. And then the leftover money that you had would be enough to buy the next bag. And then you would learn the re-up game and savings and how much money you had left because you only had to do that once. If you sold your bag, you'd be able to go buy another bag and you could flip that and you could continue doing that all day long. And though money doesn't have the same value that it once did, selling snacks at school, people buy that shit, especially if it's cheap and they've got change. I also believe that that's an entrepreneurial mindset and that leads into later life shit because I did that. I probably made 10 or 15 bucks a week selling blow pops out of a $2 bag of candy. This is the same time that I realized my mother was selling pills. So I started to steal her pills and sell them at school to all of my friends, and it escalated from there. Now, that's a big jump, selling pills in 7th grade, because kids don't have money for shit like that. So I can't imagine that was very lucrative unless you're going to the high school, and that's a whole different discussion. My middle school and high school were right next to each other, and I absolutely did that shit when I was a kid. By the time I hit 8th grade, I was pulling in 400 to 500 a week selling pills, weed, and ecstasy. I was 13 to 14, making almost as much as my parents did. I would rarely go to school because I felt like there was nothing for me there. Also understand that because you see how fast that money comes. However, there's 3 ways out of the drug game: retirement, death, or prison. And retirement is the least of those 3. Because you get used to a certain quality of life and a certain aspect of living. And if you understand how to make money, and you have a good connect, the profit margins are fucking huge. I'm not condoning drug dealing by any means, shape, or form. I'm just saying that I lived that life for a very long time in my teens, early 20s. So that's the thing. My mother's boyfriend was a drug addict. He smoked meth. Most of his family did. Most of their friends did. And I never witnessed them do it in the house, just to be clear. 9th grade and high school was the first time that I tried it myself. I'd go to school maybe 3 times a week, and I was always under the influence of something. I was taking ecstasy every single day, more than 1 or 2 pills a day because I was selling, so I had supplies. That doesn't make sense to me because the ate up feeling, it loses its potency if you do it back to back to back to back like that. The days that I wasn't in school, I was with friends, robbing houses, stealing cars, and doing drugs. I would take the stuff that we stole and sell it to resupply ourselves, and this went on for 2 years. I have little memories of those times. I believe that. As a junior in high school, I had missed the first 2 weeks of my second semester. I remember walking onto campus and immediately being escorted by the police officer to the principal. Once in their office, they told me that I was a horrible influence to their students and I wasn't allowed on their campus and that I needed to leave immediately. I got escorted to my locker to take my things from there and had to leave. I left and called my mother and let her know what happened, and she came to pick me up and sign me out of school. Something similar happened to me. I was told that I was dropped from roll. I had a truancy officer call my house and tell my mom that if I didn't start going to school, that she would be arrested for truancy because I was missing so much. So I got in trouble, I got screamed at, yelled at, punished, whatever, and then I was forced to go to school. Well, when I went to school that day, my first period teacher was like, "Mr. Burkett, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Well, you guys called and said that my mom would go to jail if I didn't come to school, so I'm here." And he's like, "Well, you have been dropped from roll. You need to go see the principal." And I was like, "No, you're telling me I've been dropped from roll, which means I don't have to be here. You guys did this. This is now on you, and I'm leaving." And I left and never went back to school. That was the end of it. And they never arrested my mom for truancy either. But I also ended up in jail shortly after that, so it didn't really matter. But I tried one school called Options for Youth, which at the time was for kids who had fallen behind. They told me I wouldn't graduate until I was 21. I was 16 and a half. I gave up after 2 months from there and would just walk around during the day where I found older kids, all 18 to 20, and I would hang out with them until I would leave to meet up with people to do sales once school got out. Fast forward a little, I'm 17, almost 18, selling elbows and full prescription bottles of pills and cashing fake checks. Oh man, this is escalating. In that time, my dad had gotten sick and was hospitalized with liver failure and jaundice. He spent 2 months in the hospital when one day we were talking during a visit and he said he had to throw up. So I grabbed him a yellow bedpan, and when he threw up, he vomited blood. It had ripped the hole in his esophagus and he started profusely vomiting blood. I rushed out to get nurses. By the time I came back, he had filled a whole bucket with blood. They called a crash team, and I remember being pushed out of the room and my dad laying there covered in blood. He pushed a doctor to the side, looked me in my eyes, and said, "I love you. You need to call your mom and Stephanie," his current baby mama. I hate that phrase. Guys, if you ever send an email, don't talk like that to me. the current mother of his child. How about not even current, the other mother or the mother of his other child. This is your sibling. Whether or not you're related by blood or whether or not you're married, he had a baby with this woman. That child is your sibling. I think that when we change the way that we view things like this, it removes some of the harshness and the animosity and the socially accepted disrespect that we throw on people like this, which is a problem for me. That was the last time I spoke to my dad. After that, I went down to my vehicle, made the phone calls, and literally smoked 2 ounces of weed with a friend and cried for hours. That day, they put him into a medically induced coma due to blood loss, and he passed away 5 days later. I don't remember anything until we held a car wash to raise money for the funeral. Then I remember the funeral. About a month after that, I went to the doctors because I hadn't slept for more than an hour a night because I couldn't get the images of him vomiting blood out of my head. Without a second question, they put me on Xanax. Of course they did, because they're fucking drug dealers. Doctors are drug dealers. This shit is practicing medicine. Why not say, I'm going to give you Xanax under the condition that you go see a therapist, right? You have to see the therapist. Once you've seen the therapist and you have a note from the therapist, then you can go get your Xanax. And if the therapist feels that you need to continue therapy, then you get a 1 week supply of Xanax and you have to come back to therapy in order to get your next prescription. Let's work through our fucking problems and cure the issue instead of just drugging people. I was on that for 2 months before trying to overdose. I took 22 pills and went for a walk and woke up in the park down the street from my house 16 hours later. I woke up, walked home, and went to sleep. I reported that my prescription had got stolen and needed a refill, and I went and got it refilled. On the way home, I cut my wrist open with a knife because at that time I wanted to feel something. About a week later, this whole fucking situation could have been avoided if they would have forced you to get therapy in order to give you drugs. I wish that younger people understood what I understand now. I wish that young people had the ability to have the conversations with people like me who have fucking been there to let them know that this is not the way to deal with your shit. Could you imagine being 17 or 18 years old and having somebody around you who is emotionally mature enough, who has gone to therapy, who has done the dirty work, the shadow work, who has understood emotional regulation, to just simply sit there and fucking listen to someone? Hey, bro, I haven't been sleeping. At that moment where you smoke 2 ounces in the car with your buddy, to just be like, bro, I'll smoke a blunt with you, but like 2 ounces, like we don't need to do that. Let's smoke, relax a little bit, and then have a conversation about what's going on. Maybe I can help you process shit. Like maybe you simply talking about it would be enough. Or hey bro, like I can tell that you're really going through it right now. I bought you a journal. Here's a journal. Just do me a favor every day when you wake up for the first 30 minutes that you're awake, drink a bottle of water before you do anything else and journal. Meditate, think about your life, and think about the goals that you want to accomplish today. I'm going to come back in a week and we're going to sit down and talk about these goals and try to figure out how to get you on a path to success, because right now you're on a path to self-destruct. There's a better way, right? Like we need those mentors. That's the whole fucking point of this entire thing for me. I want people to have access to people who have been where you are, that have found the way out of it, so that you don't have to find the way out of it the way that we did. We can give you the shortcuts because we've fucking done the work. About a week later, I had taken 15 pills and called a friend to pick me up because I couldn't walk. So she and her boyfriend picked me up. While I was in a drug daze, I fought a random person in the middle of the street in front of my house. And after I ran to my house, I grabbed my gun and I had just bought, and shot at them in the middle of the day. I didn't hit anyone, thankfully. I sold it the next day. Yeah, you were a criminal, all right. At this point in my life, I'm 18, living with my mom, her methed out boyfriend, my 4 and 5-year-old little brother and sister, 2 methed out uncles, and a grandma, all in a 2-bedroom house. Shortly after, we got an eviction notice and started living in hotels. I've also been in that position. We lost all of our belongings in storage because we never paid for them. From 18 to 21, we lived in 9 different hotels selling drugs to pay for rooms and make sure we had food for the kids. At this point, it was me, my mom, her boyfriend, and 2 kids. Me and my mom were all selling to pay for the rooms when her boyfriend was gone all the time. It reached a point where we weren't allowed to stay in any hotels in the area and could no longer afford it. So my mom, brother, and sister went to live with some friends and family, and I went to live with some of my dad's family. I stopped selling pills and hard drugs and only sold weed at this time. I'd only stopped selling the others because I had gotten robbed and shot at multiple times in 1 week. At that point, I realized I didn't want to die over that, so I stopped with the hard drugs and only sold weed. I was now 22, living with family, selling, and they didn't know. I lived with them for about a year and a half when I was at a friend's house, and her friend, who I had hung out with multiple times and had known for a little while now, needed help leaving her abusive relationship. My friend volunteered me to go help her friend move everything out before her abuser got home. So she picked me up and we cleared out all of her belongings in a day. Shortly after, we began to hang out more and more, where it became a daily thing. Within a couple months, we started dating, and I was absolutely smitten with this girl. One night, she told me she liked me and was fully into me, but couldn't commit to a drug dealer. At that point, I decided to change my life. Well, so there's your catalyst, bro. You were willing to change who you were for a woman. That's a good start, but you have to change because you want to change, not because someone else wants you to. I'm hoping that change made you realize that there's more to life than what you were doing, and that if you want longevity in your existence, you have to do the work. Within the first year of us being together, I went to get my GED and passed top of my class, got my license to drive, and my first official job at 23. I went through jobs in 9 months and operated a legal medical marijuana delivery service for months until the laws changed and permits became too expensive to operate legally. That's actually something that I looked into investing in at one point. It was about 3 months later when my cousin that I had lived with said his work had an opening, and if I wanted it, I could apply. I applied and got hired. After a year, I went to college for civil engineering. Okay, so you're fucking leveling, bro. I was at that job for 3 years when, on the same day I had talked to my girlfriend's parents about proposing to her, she announced to me that she was pregnant. We had our first baby on 10/9/21 and had an amazing year planning the wedding and got married on the edge of Niagara Falls in 12/10/2022. Love that. What a fucking dope experience that is. Niagara Falls is gorgeous, dude. Now, think for a minute where you would not have got to experience this life had you succeeded in eliminating yourself. Everything that you're experiencing right now, the dope job, the money, the kids, the woman, the fucking dope ass marriage at Niagara Falls, had you succeeded or made the decision not to change your life, none of this would have been experienced by you. This would have been, that's for other people. Other people deserve that happiness, not me. You change your mindset, you change your life. We had moved out of her mom's house shortly after and lived in a trailer at a friend's for a couple months. I had reached to a point with work where they couldn't pay me more, so I started to search for a better job with better pay. When around May or June of 23, we found out my wife was pregnant again. I landed a better job, paid well enough for us to move into our first apartment as a family. We moved in August of 2023 and recently had my second son on 3/6/24 and are living happily now with 2 sons. I go to therapy every 2 weeks. I fucking love that sentence. We have family days and life has been good. Are you doing the check-ins? If you're already doing therapy, bro, do the check-ins. tobebetter.co/downloads. Click on the check-in, print it out, and do the check-ins with your woman. You already got tools from your therapist. We have therapists write into the To Be Better podcast regularly. I'm not going to say how often because it would be an estimated number, but it happens a lot. And those therapists are downloading the check-ins, making printouts, and giving them to people to use in their marriages. They fucking work. It's free. Go download the shit. I went from a drug dealer who tried to unalive himself on a couple different occasions to a now family man that works full-time and doesn't smoke or drink. I love that. I have an alcohol issue. So even though I have a very massive bourbon collection, I allow myself 3 drinks a week. And I can only tell you maybe 3 times in the last 4 years where I have hit all 3 of those drinks. One of them was on a taste test for an episode that we did. One of them was at a meet and greet because I was having a great time socially and I was drinking. And I can't even think of the other one, but I'm giving myself leeway so I'm not lying to you guys. I was able to make something that I overdid into something that I can turn into a discipline and enjoy in a social situation and not overdo it. I don't ever get drunk. I very rarely get to catch a buzz. Having that cutoff limit and knowing that that is my absolute non-negotiable for me for the week, I don't hit the 3 drink mark. Very rarely do I ever do that. P.S. There's some random bits and pieces to the story that I could add, but that's most of it. I don't want to make it any longer than it already is. My wife loves you guys and the work that you do both. It's helped us so much. Keep up the great work. Just know your voice does help so many people. Thank you. There is an information here for a follow-up. Dudes gave me his phone number in case I want to call him and add things. So if you guys have questions about this, you can leave it in the comments and I can reach out to him. This was 23 minutes. This did not tax me mentally, so we're going to do another one. This email is also also 6 pages. This one is called The Voice of the Broken. There's no real name here, and it says names have been changed by the writer. So we're fucking throwing names out on this one. All right, jumping right into it. No text from the wizards letting me know what the issues were, but there's definitely drug abuse. So moving on. My experience in life are just that. It happened. And if my story will help a person, I will be happy. There you go. That's acceptance. That is life-changing accountability and acceptance. It didn't happen to me. I'm not a victim of it. I made choices. My life fucking happened. It happened. Period. It's done. I love that. My experience in life are just that. It happened. Period. Full stop. Full chest. I don't know who you are, bro, but I'd give you a high five right now. I was struggling with ADHD. I was in the extreme case and was told that I would never be normal. But damn if the adults in my life tried. Disciplining me if I acted odd. One of my punishments was to stand in the corner, and if I moved or even twitched, the time started over or I got smacked. I was there for hours. Emotional regulation was something that I struggled with as a child. Anger problems, period. By 7, I was a test subject for meds that lasted for 5 years. One medication almost killed me. I was on one med that shut down my appetite, so I was malnourished. Not for a lack of food, just because I couldn't eat due to the medication. Practicing medicine. It's a fucking theme, apparently. I was so malnourished. By the time they took me off the medication, my internal organs were starting to shut down. I felt that they didn't want what was best for me, but for them. I never opened up to them again as a child. That makes sense, dude. I think that the whole fucking ADHD thing is bullshit. I think that we stick kids in a classroom and tell them to shut the fuck up and sit still for 8 hours and expect them to grow and be molded into the adults that we wish they were. And every person is going to learn and experience life differently. Now, am I saying that ADHD doesn't exist? Absolutely not. I'm just saying that there's a better way. That what we're doing with children and making them be still in the classroom and not allowing them to interact with other social beings and live the life that we have lived for hundreds of thousands of years is a detriment. And because they're not doing the things that they want and they're a fucking problem, we stick drugs in their bellies and like, now, do what I tell you. Right? Like, that's how I view that shit. I'm an opinionated fuck. That's all there is to that. You guys can love it or hate it. I don't really give a shit. These are my opinions. And I'm not a doctor. So this is not professional speak. This is an opinion of a guy on the internet who has tattoos on his face. My mom worked a lot, but she was always home to make dinner. And when she was around, she kept dad under control. My dad worked as a mechanic a lot. It was always before mom, and he would drink, and he was a mean drunk, often verbally abusive and sometimes physically. To this day, I still feel uncomfortable letting my father walk behind me because I would often get smacked in the back of the head, sometimes for no reason. So you now have a trauma response and you don't trust the parental figures in your life. I could also see how that would create a hypervigilance and how you would have a hard time with anyone being behind you, not just your dad. I have 3 older sisters. I'm the youngest. I was often outnumbered when it came to my sisters. I couldn't fight back, but they were perfectly fine using violence against me. This is why the whole, if a woman hits you, you can't hit them back thing is bullshit in my opinion. If you are attacked, you should have the right to defend yourself. I don't give a fuck who's attacking you. I remember one time being chased by my sister, them snapping me with wet towels, leaving welts. I grabbed one, snapped back, and the next thing I knew, I had a hand on my face from my father. He hit me so hard that I saw white and hit the ground like a sack of potatoes, or at least that's what my sister told me. I was the only one who got hit because I was a boy and boys don't hit girls. See, this is a gray area. You guys snapping each other with towels, that's normal kid shit being fun. Like, that's playtime. I don't understand why that would have been a problem. Now, if you hit her in the face with a towel while she was smacking your legs with it, I could see how that would be a problem because you took it too far. But for you guys to just be popping each other with towels, like, that's kid shit. What's the problem in that? Thinking back now, I can't remember a time in my childhood where I had a positive contact with my father. That's fucking rough. The times I felt most at peace was only when I was reading a book. I'd isolate myself a lot and escape into books, helping my dad work on a car when he was sober or sitting in the dining room watching my mom cook dinner. When I was 10, I made a friend with a girl in school and we would hang out after school. She lived nearby. We both loved books and we talked for hours or just sat and read in the same room. I never brought her over to my house or told my parents about her or my sisters because I would be teased and made fun of. That's an assumption because you never actually told them. But having a female friend at 10 years old, I don't see, parents are fucked up, man. We have to do better as parents. This is all there is to that shit. When I went over to her house, her parents were neglectful of her, often leaving her children alone, her alone, and doing their own thing, including on her birthday. I was super pissed about that, so I came over to give her a gift, snuck out of the house late at night, and that's when I found her in the bathtub. She had slit her wrist. Holy fuck. I remember grabbing her wrist and the water was scalding hot. I was too late. Bro, how did this go from just to that? Damn. I remember grabbing her wrist and the water was scalding hot. I was too late. I don't remember much of what I did after that. I remember crying and screaming, waking up my bed the next day. I had sprayed off outside and tossed the clothes. I heard the news report. I didn't tell anyone what they said. I didn't tell anybody they said her parents found her. I didn't tell anybody about what I saw until much later afterward with therapy. I think part of me suppressed it. I was 11 and I fell into drugs and did everything I could to kill this pain. I believe that. I've had somebody die in my arms. I know that feeling. I know what that feeling is. The main drugs were opioids, weed, and acid. Ironically enough, those were always the drugs that I used when I was little too. The go-to I used was weed and morphine together. I was in a daze for most of the next year. My parents only saw the anger and outburst. The violence had sent me into an anger management school to try to help. This speaks on a lot about how easy it is for young kids to get drugs, especially when their parents are users, because it's there. We think that like our kids don't have access to the medicine cabinet. Our kids would never do that. They would never take our meds. They clearly fucking do. During this period, I was dealing with an internal struggle of wanting to die to stop the pain of the nightmare. And when I couldn't find peace, when you can't find peace in your waking life or your dreams, that's hell. Not wanting to cause this pain to anybody else, I would go more reckless. I would do more reckless things. That way it was an accident. And I would not be guilty of the sin that was tearing me apart. The anger management school helped kind of like treating the symptoms of cancer. I thought it was better. I got my anger under control, but the guilt and self-loathing, the nightmares were still there, including the want to die. I woke up every day crying that I had to hurt once again. That's insane. Anger management never did anything for me besides piss me off. I would go to anger management because I was court ordered to do so, and literally all it would do would make me angry. I learned absolutely no coping skills in anger management. Once I got the anger under control enough to mask and hide my pain with something other than anger, I got funny. I started smoking cigarettes at 13. I would get into fights and steal. I stopped going to classes. Side note, I still passed them because of the massive amount of reading I did, and I'm good at math. I didn't have to apply myself hard to pass. I was still doing drugs and not stopping. What does that say about our school systems? Where you can simply read, which makes you a free thinker and allows you to process information on your own. If you're decent at math, you can do drugs and pass because they keep lowering the fucking standards for people to be able to pass their shit, making people more and more dependent on the government, more and more dependent on being a drone worker. The whole entire point of the school system was to make fucking factory workers. And you find that a lot of people are in those useless dead-end jobs. They're not useless. They obviously serve a purpose, but they're not going to ever get you anywhere. I remember I made my friend Mike, who I would smoke with, and looking back, he wasn't a good friend, just an enabler. But being his friend was one of the best choices I ever made. When I was 15, I went over to his house. I met somebody else, Tara. She was much older than me, and she was renting a room there. She was 9 years older than me. So at 15 years old, you met a girl who was 24. I do realize that it was a teen attraction to an older woman. It took me 2 weeks to get the courage to just talk to her. It turns out we had a lot in common. We got talking and became friends. We would chat about books and listen to music. We had the same taste, classic rock music. We had a similar sense of humor, and the pain was forgotten about when I was with her. I found a friend who just wanted me. I found that I started to enjoy my days. I'd stopped doing as much drugs and just didn't need them as much when I was over there or just in general. So you picked a different addiction. We stayed friends until just before I turned 18. That's when things got complicated with us. I was still doing drugs, addiction and all that, mostly pot and painkillers. She did not know that I kept this a secret. She told me that she didn't like people who did drugs, and then she didn't want to associate with people who did. And so I decided that if I wanted her in my life, I had to quit. So I did. I just left. I planned it out during the summer. I told my parents that I was going to a summer camp with a friend and checked myself into a local church that helped with this thing. And I stayed there for 3 months detoxing. When I got out, she was gone. She had moved, and my friend didn't have a number. I missed her. But I didn't want to stop, so I decided that if I was going to do something with my life, I might as well do it all in. I joined the Job Corps and learned a trade, became a cement mason. The program was 2 years, and I had stayed clean the entire program. And since, I had a couple of relationships that ended with them cheating and me leaving. After that, I stopped trying to date. A week after I completed the Job Corps program, I got a call from my friend Mike, who I hadn't kept in contact with the entire time. I just hadn't changed my number in forever, telling me that Tara needed my help moving and I had a truck. He had kept in contact with her. He stopped being my friend at that point. Now, that's because he fucking lied to you. At this point, I was in my 20s and I agreed to help and meet up. We got there. It was awkward. I didn't know what to do. And she introduced her fiance, which broke my heart. That should have been disclosed. I put that away because she was never mine and I had no claim on her. I still was happy to remain friends with her. I helped her move and kept in contact with both of them, but at first being a friend. I danced with her at her wedding. I care about her, but if she wanted to be with him, that's her choice, so I supported her. And then he got abusive. He was a physical, verbal, and emotional abuser. He isolated her. He hated me because I wouldn't leave her without a way out. No matter how many times he yelled, I would not allow him to isolate her. There was nothing I could do. She still wanted to keep him. I figured it was because she deeply loved him. She thought that she could fix it, that they were married, and that there wasn't a way out. I have a problem with all of this. This is why I have issues with friends of the opposite sex, because somebody's always got a fucking motive. And I know that that's, obviously not true. It's not always the case. Sometimes people are just friends. They've known each other for a long time and there's no sexual attraction there. But more often than not, I truly believe that there's an ulterior motive. Most men and women don't have a whole lot in common in those situations. I don't have any female friends that are true hangout, ride or die homies. Don't have anything in common with you guys. I don't give a shit about your shopping experiences at Hobby Lobby or Target. We have life experiences and we can be there for each other and we can help each other out and have a support system and a community that's dope. But there's not a whole lot that I have in common with you. As in a woman, I just don't. Peaches and I have shared hobbies and she's my woman. So she's my best friend. But if Peaches and I didn't have the shared hobbies, the closeness that we have wouldn't be there. Because I wouldn't be trying to hang out with her. It's just not a thing for me. I don't know. I don't know how to explain that. I hope that makes sense. I like that you were there for her in a support system and kept her from being abused or isolated or whatever the case may be. But knowing that you were in the background with an ulterior motive may have created other problems in her relationship that could have gotten the abuse. It could have created a whole lot of other things because you were in the background. That's also something to think about. I tried to give her help and advice. I told her to leave him and she wouldn't. At a certain point, I had threatened his life and was no longer allowed on the property. I still wouldn't allow him to isolate her. I would keep in contact. I would just try to keep it quiet so that he wouldn't abuse her over my choice to keep in contact. So she was sneaking around behind her husband's back. I was just waiting for the call once she was done with him or that she was dead. I'm going to be honest, there's a point I thought about taking matters into my own hand with him, and there was no plan to do so in parentheses. But I got a call in the middle of the night. He tried to end her. She had fought back and won. I may have committed multiple felonies while driving to her place that day. I got there a little after the police. He was locked up and arrested, and she filed for divorce and pressed charges. He pleaded to a misdemeanor. It's bullshit. When there's domestic violence, there should never be a fucking plea bargain involved. I helped her through the process and took her to the Battered Women's Association. She got a restraining order, and this whole time I am doing the work, going to groups, going to therapy. 9mm way faster than 911. I wish I could just be as blunt as I want without getting kicked off the internet. After a year, her divorce, I was 23 and she was 32. We started dating. 6 months later, we found out she was pregnant. I was still smoking cigarettes. I quit cold turkey. I did not want to be like my father, smoking and yelling at us to not smoke. I think it was a gift and a blessing. My wife and her ex-husband tried to have kids for their entire marriage, including a fertility specialist. She was told by her doctor that it would be almost impossible for her to have children, and we used condoms. We struggle to grow together and deal with our problems sometimes. We succeed, and sometimes we fail, but we never give up on each other. Our son was 4, and we took in 2 bonus children on top of it because my sister decided that she was going to give up drugs. A girl, 9 years old, and a boy, 11 years old. My sister decided she was going to give up drugs. And that's why you got the bonus kids, not because your sister was on drugs. It was and currently is a struggle. Our son is autistic and amazingly funny, smart, and creative. My niece has come with complications of her own. She's outgoing and smart when she applies herself. Her mother did meth while she was pregnant, and that left some problems behind that are taking a long time to work through, including oppositional defiant disorder and abandonment issues. My nephew is now almost a man. He's 17 and almost acing every class. I couldn't be more proud of all of them. I'm still working at making this life the best it can be. We live in hard times, and it's a struggle just to make ends meet. About my parents, my father realized the way he behaved was harmful. He did change, and I have rebuilt a relationship with him, and we don't have long. He has terminal stage 4 COPD and emphysema. The way I see it is we should not be judged by the way we were, but who we choose to be now. I fucking agree. Because your past is just that. It doesn't exist anymore. We get so caught up in the hurt of things, and they did this to me, and they did that to me, and I'm the victim, and me. When in reality, people are doing the shit that they're doing for them. It has nothing to fucking do with you. 99% of the time, you're an afterthought. We have this center of the universe mentality where our ego tells us that we are the most important thing on the fucking planet and everything revolves around us. And we forget that other people feel the same way. When you accept that, you are not the center of the universe, and everybody's going to live the life that they view best for them and doing the things that make them happy, whether it slights you or not. It changes your perspective on things. It changes the way that you view the world, most of the time in a much better way. I found people that I want to struggle with and makes it worth it. I love that sentence. I found people that I want to struggle with because we're going to struggle one way or the other. Now I got a fucking team. We're going to struggle together. I love that. I found a community that cares and loves the people that are in it. Since I found the To Be Better podcast, my life and perspective of life has become so much richer, and I found a community that I feel included in. Okay, I had no idea that you were a member of the community. I love that you found strength here. Okay, I'm not going to lie. That makes me feel really fucking good. It makes me feel good knowing that the community that you're referring to is the community that we built. And by we, I mean you had a part in it. Everybody that's ever been a part of the Discord community and has helped any way, shape, or form with what we've got going on that's part of the To Be Better tribe, it wouldn't exist without all of you. It was a thought. Thoughts become things. We turned it into something tangible, and the people that are there are the community. Since I found the To Be Better podcast, my life and perspective of life have become so much richer, and I found a community that I feel included in. I love that you use the term richer. When you find that, hold on to it. I created my peace with my wife and a home for my family so they can all be loved. That's awesome. I'm sorry that your wife was abused. Sorry that that was a thing and that continued to be a thing while she was going through the trials and tribulations of her life. And though you being in the background, I could see being an issue, I hope that it gave her solace instead of making her life harder. There's a whole lot that I can say about that. I wish that I could talk to the two of you because I have a whole lot of questions about that, and I think that it would be a good discussion. I have one more email to read that should put us at an hour. This was only 4 pages long. This one's also called The Voice of the Broken, and I feel like I might have read this. All right. Hi, Chris. I'm the proud father of 2 amazing children. They are my world. I began my email telling you this about my kids because without them, I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. How about a little backstory? How about that? Let's do that. 2008, I met my now ex-wife, and soon after I got married. I had a great job making a good living, working offshore in the oil field. In 2015, I got laid off and decided to try a transition to a career in sales. Took a huge pay cut. Yeah, I bet you fucking did. But hey, we got to start somewhere, right? The stress of loss of income and the change in my work schedule going from a 14 on, 14 off rotation and being home all the time had a negative impact on my marriage. I bet it did. Didn't help that I started drinking a lot more. And my wife and I got a divorce in 2016 and my life started its downward spiral. There are a lot of people who do really well when their spouses are on the road truckers, they're oil rig workers, they're EMTs, they're home 2 days, off 3 days, or work 3 days, off 3 days, whatever. And they're not there 24/7 because it allows autonomy of the partner where you guys get to live your own individual lives, having the independence of a somewhat free marriage, not cheating wise, but like you're free to live the life you want to live. And then when you go to being around each other 24/7, a whole lot of problems start because you're not used to having that type of interaction with your person. The things that you overlook or were overlooked over short bursts become a all the time thing, and it becomes problematic. I began fucking up at my job in outside sales. I started drinking on the job, was selling drugs on the side. I ended up losing that job and started selling full time. In the beginning of 2019, I got into a terrible car wreck and was in the ICU for a month. The wreck left me with some cognitive issues that made it even more difficult to find a job. Doctors told me that with time and work, I could regain some sort of normalcy. While I was recovering over the next 8 months, I again started drinking heavily and lost heavily and doing and selling drugs. At the end of 2019, I lost my father and couldn't take it. I spiraled even further into depression, and that came with a bigger risk. Both with my drug use and my chances I was taking, I started running much larger quantities state to state and ended up getting indicted on Fed charges. I was sentenced to 70 months in federal prison, of which I served a little over 4 years. Bro, the moment you cross state lines with anything, it becomes a federal crime. I had friends who were in the running game and made a lot of fucking money making runs. I had friends that would swallow balloons and fly across borders. Like, there was a whole lot of people that I had in my life at one point in time. Believe it or not, most of the people that are running like that are women because they're less likely to be searched and fucked with if they've got, if they're caught pulled over speeding or whatever. Yeah, but that Fed time is no joke. It's definitely better than doing state time, but that federal shit is a whole lot different. While I was incarcerated, I worked on me. I realized that I was the problem and that I had to change. I had to be better, in parentheses. Yes, you fucking do. I told myself that if it doesn't improve me, I don't want it. I'm curious what your life looked like when you got out, because a lot of people go through that self-improvement. It's like jailhouse religion. You get in there and you're like, I'm gonna better myself. I'm gonna do the thing. And then you hit the streets and you realize you ain't got no money. You ain't got nowhere to go. And you go right back to the drug game because it's real easy to re-up and start over. Especially if you've got friends who knew the kind of money that you were making before and you had that client base, they'll front you whatever you need. If it's not something that would make my children proud, I'm not doing it. So I worked, I shaped, and I molded myself into the best version of me I had seen in over a decade. Woo. I had limited contact with my children during this time, but instead of letting that break me, it only strengthened my resolve. I had to drop the poor me attitude. Yes, depression is real, but I found that by just making a conscious decision to change every aspect of my life, I started to feel better. Choice Therapy by Dr. William Glasser. Depression is not something that you can will yourself out of, but you can start doing the things that will pull you out of the depression. Eating better, going to the gym, going for a walk, not isolating yourself, reaching out to people, going to therapy. You have options. You just have to be the one to do it because no one's going to do it for you. No one is coming to fucking save you. I started to feel better. With this newly found optimistic attitude came a jolt of energy. It has put energy into a steady workout. I can read, I promise. Steady workout that progressed into a passion. I combined this with a new clean diet. The next thing I knew, not only was I feeling better about myself mentally, but physically, and I was beginning to see a change. My depression was getting better, but I still had work to do. The communication with my children was limited, being locked up. I was at the mercy of my children's mother. At the best of times, I was allowed one 15-minute call split between the two of them once every other week. That fucking sucks. This went on for the better part of my incarceration. As you can imagine, this was not enough, so I tried to use any avenue I could to stay in some way a part of their life. I drew pictures, wrote letters to mail them. As much as this was for them, it also helped me because I knew in my heart that I was doing everything I could to continue to be a part of their life. Still had issues with anxiety, though. Being inside, there's only so much you can control. And I had trouble not being in control, so I had to learn to let go of a lot of the things that I couldn't fix or change at that time. Started meditating and breathing exercises, which helped my panic attacks, as well as my anxiety. I bet they fucking did, because meditation stills the brain and breathing exercises can do a whole lot for you. Since I've been released, I've made it a point to not only surround myself with positive, like-minded people, and in doing so, I've continued on my journey to improve. I have a strong set of values that I adhere to and will not waver from them or anyone. To sum it up, it's really pretty simple. Decide to make a change. Without action, there will be no change, and consistency is key. You have to follow through. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Don't bullshit yourself. Say what you mean what you say. Every one of these bullet points is how I live my life. I'm currently out of prison and rebuilding a relationship with my kids, plural. I've got a steady job working crazy hours for not so great money, but that's okay. I'm sober, and I'm back to the point where I like who I am as a person. I've met an amazing woman who loves me and all of my flaws. Things are going great with me and my kiddos, and I'm even getting along with my ex. So what have I learned? It's okay to not be okay. It is okay to not be okay. You just have to keep trying, keep getting up, keep moving forward. You have to look out for yourself because no one will do it for you. No one is coming to save you. We can get better. You just have to put in the work. I love the man I am, and I won't change for anyone. Thank you for listening to my story. By the way, I love watching you and your wife's podcast. I wish you all the best. Okay, so while I was reading this email, I had a flash in my brain of you getting a dietitian nutrition certification, which can be done online, getting a personal training certification through the ISSA or any of them for that matter, NASM, whatever, and then opening your own business as a personal trainer because you have the mental fortitude to do the things that most weak people are unable to do. The amount of people who get into personal training and pay a trainer do so because they don't have anyone in their life to hold them accountable to reach the goals that they're trying to reach. As you develop a personal bond with your clients, you now have a deeper insight to their life, and that can lead into mentorship. If you are able to get to the point where you can start coaching young men who play football, high school, college, whatever, you have a gateway to change lives long term because you had you had this shitty beginning. You've had a blue collar job. You've tried to do the sales things. You've been in the drug game. You've done the prison thing. You have all of the makings of greatness. You just have to fucking do it. And because you've already started, what's next? What are you going to do with your life in this next venture? Are you going to be an employee the rest of your life? Or are you going to be your own boss? Entrepreneurship would look real fucking good on you. You have the drive to do it. So why haven't you? That's my question to you. Guys, that puts us at almost an hour. This is episode 10 of The Voice of the Broken. I had a real good time reading this. I'm glad none of it made me cry. First episode, yes. Love that shit. If you would like to have your voice heard, send us an email to tobebetterco. Title it, tobebetterco@gmail.com. Title it The Voice of the Broken. And let's change the world, guys. We'll see you on the next one.